Survivors begins with one of the most shocking ideas British television ever attempted, and then slowly removes the shock. When Survivors first appeared on British television in the mid-1970s, it was almost unbearably stark. A global plague, empty roads, collapsed institutions, the sudden disappearance of everyone you had ever relied on. It is still one of the most powerful opening premises British television has ever committed to screen, not because of spectacle, but because of how little reassurance it offers. There is no rescue coming. There is no explanation that restores order. There is only survival. But Survivors presents an unusual problem, one that most television drama quietly avoids. What happens after the shock wears off? Disaster drama thrives on immediacy. Fear is dramatic, violence is dramatic, collapse is dramatic. But collapse is also, by definition, temporary. If people survive, if they live for weeks or months or years, then drama must find something else to attach itself to. And this is where Survivors does something quietly radical. Instead of endlessly repeating panic, it allows the premise to move forward. And in doing so, it risks something most television avoids. It risks becoming less exciting. The first series of Survivors is dominated by shock. The terror lies not only in death, but in absence. Absence of authority, absence of rules, absence of any shared future. Danger comes from sudden encounters, desperate individuals, unstable groups, violence born of fear rather than ideology. Drama is immediate, physical, emotional. It is television operating at full intensity, and it could have stayed there. Many shows would have. But Survivors refuses to reset. People don't simply wander forever through ruins. They begin to settle. They begin to cooperate. They begin to argue, not about survival, but about how survival should work. And at this point, the series quietly changes genre. The threat is no longer extinction. The threat is organisation. As communities form, the drama becomes less explosive and more difficult. Situations emerge that don't have obvious villains. Who leads? Who decides? What is worth preserving? What gets left behind? Conflict is no longer about ambushes and weapons, but about trust, responsibility, and memory. This is where some viewers begin to feel that the show has lost something. What it has actually lost is spectacle. What it has gained is process. If television is structurally comfortable with crisis, it is far less comfortable with continuity. Rebuilding civilization involves negotiation, compromise, boredom, failure, and repetition. These are not traditionally televisual pleasures, and Survivors doesn't disguise them. Establishing power, setting up communications, creating trade networks, deciding who does what work. This is drama about systems, not moments. And that makes it feel quieter, slower, and for some, less gripping. But that discomfort is revealing. By the later stages of Survivors, the question is no longer, will we live? It is, what are we building? And that is a far more unsettling question, because once survival is secured, morality returns, politics returns, hierarchy returns. The apocalypse doesn't free people, it merely delays the arguments civilization always has. In this sense, Survivors stops being a disaster drama and becomes something rarer, a continuity drama. Survivors is often remembered for its beginning, but its real ambition lies in its refusal to stay there. It asks whether television drama can function once the adrenaline fades, whether meaning can come from maintenance rather than catastrophe. Most shows answer that question by quietly resetting the board. Survivors doesn't. It allows its world to age, to become compromised, to become recognisably human again. And that makes it less shocking, but more honest. Very few television series have been willing to follow a premise this far. Later post-apocalyptic dramas often return to chaos because chaos is easier to dramatise. Survivors tried something harder. It suggested that the real test of civilization is not how it collapses, but how it reforms, imperfectly, slowly, and without guarantees. And that may be why it remains an uncomfortable series to revisit, not because it failed, but because it refused to pretend that survival is the same thing as hope. So Survivors begins with one of the greatest shocks in British television history, and then it asks a question television rarely wants to answer. What happens when the end of the world becomes normal? So thanks very much for listening. I do appreciate you getting to the end. If that video worked for you, then this one may too, and I will be back soon with another TV show.